Hey everyone, and welcome to Starstream. This is our first ever live digital star party that takes place right here online. And this evening's going to be kind of a trial run. We're going to see how this goes. But thank you all for tuning in. So, the way this works is that we have two telescopes outside right now, and both of them are running. We've got cameras on them, they're ready to go. And because we have a special event going on tonight, we actually have the conjunction of Venus and the Pleiades this evening. And this happens every 8 years. And tonight it just happens to be this evening. And if you go out tonight, right now, actually, you can go out and see Venus situated right in front of the Pleiades. So I figured to start with, we're going to start observing that. So the way this is going to work is that we're basically going to do a star party. We're going to have telescopes outside. We're going to route live images from those telescopes live here online and just kind of talk about those objects, what's cool about them, and if there's anything you want to see or ask questions about, I'll be happy to answer them for you. We have a live chat that you can answer questions, ask questions, let me know if there's something you want to see. But to get started, we're going to start doing a stream of the Pleiades and Venus conjunction. So we're going to switch over to our wide field telescope and get that going. Now, Venus is really quite bright tonight, as it always is, but this is something that is very, very bright tonight. So there's going to be some reflections in this, but let's get this started. We're going to start with 10-second exposures. The telescope right now is an 82 millimeter, or just over a 3-inch refractor. And we've got a corrector on there, and our color CCD. It's a crop sensor CCD, so APS-C. It's going to look a little funky because Venus is so bright. And there's a lot of light going through there. So we're going to get some reflections in there, but you'll be able to see Venus sitting pleasantly in front of the Pleiades. And we're tracking's a little bit off right now, but we're checking that out. And then, so the Pleiades right now is an open cluster in the constellation Taurus. And so it's about 450 to 500 light years away from the Earth, and it's easily a naked eye object, especially from light polluted locations. And it's something that you can do from your backyard, and a pair of binoculars is a great way to take a look at that, or a small telescope. And then Venus, of course, is quite bright, easy to see from pretty much anywhere, and naked eye, it's easy to see. A small telescope, though, of at least a 3-inch with a decent amount of magnification, you can start to see the phases. Now, Venus, as well as Mercury, sit within the orbit of Earth, and because of its positioning, we can look down into those orbits and actually see phases on those planets. So Mercury and Venus both have phases just like the moon does. And with a little bit of magnification, especially Venus, you can see those phases relatively easy. Venus is just past quarter phase and moving into more of a crescent. And it's something you can see by just going out and viewing yourself. Small telescope, if about a 3-inch, if you can do bigger, you just get more brighter detailed images. And that's something that you can definitely check out from anywhere. And we're all, of course, stuck at home, so why not go out, take a look at it. It's going to be visible for the next several months in the western sky as the evening star, and then of course it transitions to the morning star after that. But so that's what we're looking at right now. We've got the Pleiades in the back. That's about 450, 500 light years away, an open cluster in the constellation of Taurus, the Bull. It is primarily a winter object. So at the moment, we're it's setting. We're at the end of the season. We are now officially in spring. So we're losing all the objects right now that were in the wintertime, and now we're transitioning into spring. And I'm going to restart this real quick because we got a little bit of drift in the scope. This is not the primary scope, by the way. This is a external system that we're running. This is an 82 millimeter refractor on a completely separate mount, a completely separate camera from what we'll be using the rest of the evening. After this, we'll switch over to the main system. The main system is a 6-inch f4.5 ED triplet refractor with a monochrome camera. Now, moving forward, if we do more of these, you're going to notice that nothing is going to be in color. I prefer to use monochrome or black and white cameras because they're vastly more sensitive than their color counterparts. So we'll be able to get a lot more detail, you just won't have the color there. But there's plenty of pretty color pictures out there that you can look at and check out if you want to see any of that at this point. So you can always go find some cool color image online, but everything here is going to be black and white and allows us to get that detail out of there. So right now, we're actually running a color camera, and that's something that we can all check out there. So sorry, I'm having a little technical. I'm just starting to see the chat come through. So thanks for all writing into that, and I'll try to answer any of those if I can. So right now, again, if you're just joining us, we're on the Pleiades M45 in the constellation of Taurus the Bull. We wanted to catch this early because it is setting. If there are any targets that you want to check out, Orion or the Horsehead, the Rosette, any of those objects, those we can definitely get, but they're going to set early from the position we're in. So we can switch over now to the main scope if you want to see that. But right now we're running our 3-inch or 82 millimeter refractor with a crop sensor camera. It's a cooled CCD camera, and that's out there separately. We set that up just for this special event. This is the conjunction of Venus and the Pleiades. It happens every 8 years. So we're going to switch over to the main scope now because we're kind of crushed for time to get some of the other popular wintertime targets at this point. So let's stop this, and we're going to switch over from the wide field setup, and we're going to go to the main setup now. George, the whole control system we're running right now is SkyX. It runs everything, so I swear by this software, and it lets me do everything. And that's what I'm using tonight. Nicole, the filter wheel we're using tonight is a Starlight Express MIDI wheel. They're relatively new. The green ones were branded for Skywatcher, and that's what we're using tonight. We're using a Starlight Express 694 monochrome camera as the main system, and with a 7-position filter wheel that has luminance, red, green, blue, H alpha, O3, and S2, and all the narrowband filters in there, the HA, O3, S2, all of those are 3 nanometer filters, so they're very, very narrow to help us cut through any light pollution. So that's what we're running tonight. So our first target, just because we are getting low, is the Horsehead. Sorry, got all caught up in there. So what we're going to do here is we're actually going to switch the filter wheel, and we're going to go to the hydrogen alpha filter to help cut out that light pollution. We do have a bright moon, and we're going to try to get the Horsehead out of here. and I've done this before. This is really quite amazing what you can do in town with this kind of equipment. So now we've switched over to the main telescope. It's a Skywatcher 6-inch Esprit 150 triplet. It has the Star Arizona Apex L, Apex EDL reducer. So we're actually running it at 4.55, so it's really fast. And all this is sitting on our Paramount MX. And try to get as much out of this as we can this evening. But go to full screen here. So we're actually on the Horsehead now. We're running 20-second exposures, and the camera's currently set at a 2x2 bin, and we have a little bit of trailing there. The mount's gotten bumped throughout the day, so might have to recalibrate it at this point. But we can get a look at that and go in there. So, but right now what we're looking at is the Horsehead nebula, and this is in the constellation of Orion, just after the lower bright star Alnitak. And this is almost impossible to see from light polluted skies. You really need to have a dark sky and a pretty large aperture scope to see something like this. And try to get this. I'm going to try to clean up our tracking here a little bit. See what's going on here. So I'm going to try to clean up our tracking here real quick and see if we can get some better guidance out of the mount. So bear with me real quick. What we're going to do is we're going to just pick up some targets real quick, or we'll go back to the Pleiades. So while my main scope here is doing its alignment, just to clean up some of the tracking errors, we'll get better aligned here. It'll only take a couple minutes to get that going, but we'll switch over to the Pleiades and kind of talk about what Starstream's going to be moving forward, and try to get this cleaned up so that way we can start doing more precise tracking here in a minute. So let me switch over to our main scope, or we're going to switch back over to the Pleiades telescope real quick while we do all the alignment process here and get it a little bit more cleaned up. All right, so on the back end right now, I've got the main telescope. So what happens with a lot of this stuff is that you'll set this stuff up the night before, and then throughout the day, especially if it's on grass, it'll start to sink into the grass just because of the weight, and that actually offsets your whole alignment. So you get close, but then you have to go back and clean it up. So what we've got going on here, for anybody who's just joining us at the moment, this is going to be the Pleiades and the Venus conjunction that's occurring right now and has been the last couple days. This happens every 8 years. This is running on an 82 millimeter refractor, and this camera on here is a Starlight Express Trius 25C. That's a crop sensor CCD. Now the Pleiades cluster is an open cluster in the constellation of Taurus, the Bull, and it's very, very easy to see from your backyard. Right now, actually, a small pair of binoculars and a little telescope or anything like that easily resolve these. Just tonight we have Venus sitting in front of it. Roy, we can definitely do the trapezium. That's no problem at all. Once the main telescope is finished doing its alignment, which should only take a couple minutes, we'll be a lot better positioned to really start pumping out better images here. Just have to get the tracking a little bit cleaned up, so things kind of settled over the day and the heat. So I don't have the luxury of being on a permanent pier at the moment. So we'll get the tracking cleaned up on the main scope. For the meantime, we're running a little 3-inch telescope just on the Pleiades. I don't have the ability to control it right now because it's on its separate system. But yeah, if there's some target that you'd like to see this evening, that's what the whole thing is about. It's a digital star party. I understand, unfortunately, due to the way the world is right now, we're not able to get together in person and view all these things the way we want to. So we have the technology now to stream. So we've got telescopes in the back, and we're going to go try to explore a range of different targets tonight. We'll try to do Orion. The Pleiades we're already doing, obviously. So we'll try to do Orion, the Horsehead. We have Comet 2019 C2019 Y4 Atlas is also up, and definitely want to get over to there. That'll be easy. And then, of course, we are now officially in spring. So with that being said, everything is galaxies right now. So all the wintertime objects in the Milky Way are now setting in the east, or setting in the west, I'm sorry. And everything in the east is our springtime objects. And the way we look in our galaxy is during the springtime, we're looking out away off the plane of the Milky Way and up into kind of the more galactic regions, which include Virgo and Leo and Coma Berenices and Canis Vernactices and Ursa Major with the Big Dipper and Corvus. There's all kinds of stuff, all galaxies out there. There's actually some cool clusters and nebulas out there too, but mostly galaxies. So towards the end of this, however long, there's no time limit for this. We're just kind of giving this a go, and if people enjoy it, we'll just keep going. I'm at home, so I've no problem at all. But let me stop this, just double check where we're at. Okay. Let me stop this real quick. What we're doing right now is just trying to get everything a little bit more dialed in for better alignment. What we found is we were actually drifting a bit earlier, so I want to get this cleaned up so our main telescope is ready to point to all those cool targets that we want to go out and see. So I'm just going to do a quick run through here on getting that up and running so we can actually get some good targets to look at and make sure we don't get any streaking in our shots. Now, one of the main targets we're going to be looking at is Comet Atlas, and that's a lot of people are starting to see more and more of this comet come up in news and stuff like that because it's supposedly going to get brighter. And supposedly, let me say, comets are tricky things. You don't want to get too involved with them yet or commit too much to them. So if you're ever curious about comets, this is what I use. This is called cometchasing.skyhound.com. And this gives you all the comets that are currently up, at least the ones that are probably worth going out and checking out for the time being. And it does it for both hemispheres. So if you're curious about a comet and you want to go check out a comet, these are all the positions and everything that you can go verify that. So go out, check it out. This is where you can actually find good information on the comets if you're looking for one. And this is what I use whenever I'm going to go out and observe. There's always something there. A lot of them at times are relatively faint, but we've had C 2018 F4 pan stars. That was visible a couple weeks ago. There's been one of the pan stars. There's a lot of pan stars. So there's a lot of stuff up there, but right now it's C 2019 Y4 Atlas is bright. It's actually moving towards 7th magnitude at this point, which means it's almost naked eye visible from a dark sky. So it's definitely something to keep track of. They're actually saying that it's supposed to possibly be naked eye comet as we approach May, but we also said that about ISON, and look where that got us. So I wouldn't hold your breath on comets, but they're always a real treat if they definitely spark up and make some interesting things. So let me check on our alignment process here. It's about halfway done. So we're pounding through it. If there's any target you want to see tonight, let me know in the chat section there. And once our main scope is finished with its alignments, we can get all that ready to go. Just trying to clean up some stuff so we're good to go. And then everything's pretty much fair game at this point. So we're almost done with that process. And then we can definitely, Roy, we can definitely go do the trapezium. We have the Horsehead. We have a lot available to us at this point. And if you haven't had a chance to see it yet, go out and check out Venus and the Pleiades. That is a conjunction or two objects in the night sky come together. That is only visible every 8 years. So now would be the time to do it. If you've got clear skies, just take a step out, look out to the west. A pair of binoculars would look kind of cool. I've been shooting it last couple nights with a 200mm lens, and works really well. You don't need a lot of magnification to see it, so just step outside while we've got some time and grab that. And if, like I said, if there's any type of target you want to see, just put it over there in the chat, and we'll get over and check it out. Because all of that would be fair game at this point. See if this is almost finished. Almost there. If the internet gets a little laggy, or the stream gets a little buggy, had some weird internet stuff today, so just bear with me. It's actually holding in there pretty well, but hopefully as it gets later in the evening, things will level out a bit more as more people go to sleep and stop taking up the bandwidth. So we're nearly done with our alignment. In the future, a lot of this will already be finished, but since this is the first time, we're just working out some of the little kinks, and then we'll take a look at what's up in the nighttime sky tonight. But if you have anything that you want to see, just type it over there in the chat, or if you have a question about a target, just type it over there in the chat, and I'll try to get over to that. On top of that, everything you see tonight's going to be live. This is the way the system works, is the telescope is literally right outside, wired inside here. We've got a monochrome camera on the back of it, so it's very, very sensitive. We have a 7-position filter wheel loaded with all the filters you'd want, but everything you're going to see tonight is going to be black and white because we want that sensitivity. We want to see the nitty-gritty details. And color cameras, just because they're bare matrix, so you have red pixels, blue pixels, green pixels. If any red light lands on a blue or green pixel, you lose it, or vice versa. So you kind of lose a third of your chip sensitivity using a color camera. Yeah, it looks pretty and you get those colors, but when we're going after real faint things, you need all the sensitivity that you're going to get. And to increase the sensitivity, we have the camera on the main telescope running 2x2 bin, and that means it's taking 4 pixels and making them 1 super pixel, which makes the system twice as sensitive. And it's also running at f4.5 on a 6-inch refractor. So really, really fast system. So we've got 2 more targets, and then the alignment should be good enough for government work. And we'll get off to actually taking a look at what we're doing there. We can definitely check out M81 and M82. Those are good targets. They're nice and high right now as well. So we'll take a look at those. We're going to try to run over to Orion really quick before we lose it in the nebula-eating tree that is behind us. So it looks like we're done. Now, thanks for hanging in there. Let's finish this and get on with the evening. And hopefully this is good enough. It's gonna have to be. There might be some streaking tonight. We'll just deal with it. But let's get started. I don't want to waste any more time going on to this. So let's start, of course, with the Orion Nebula. We're going to send the scope over there. Now, the Orion Nebula, of course, is really popular with a lot of people. And it's a star-forming region. I'll wait till we get over there. Fred, I've had a lot of people who've really like the ZWO cameras. For their price, they're really hard to beat. I use the Starlight cameras, and they're excellent cameras. I know for a lot of people, they're on the pricey side, especially to start out with. So the ZWO 533 is hard to beat, and that would do both planetary and deep sky as well. So that's where I would start. I would check out the 533 from ZWO to start with. Eventually, you'll probably want to move to better chips like the CMOS cameras, or the CCD cameras have cleaner chips at the moment. But we'll see where technology goes. There's so much crazy stuff. It's hard to keep up with any of the technology when it comes to cameras. So we'll see how this works. So to start, we're on the Orion Nebula. Now, we're also on the Orion Nebula with the hydrogen alpha filter. And hydrogen alpha filter is going to cut out any light pollution that is sitting up in the nighttime sky, because it's taking a very thin section of the spectrum, in the red portion of the spectrum, and letting that light through. And that just happens to be where a lot of these nebulas emit light. And Orion is an emission nebula, which means it emits light, normally from the stars in the center. And think of it like a neon sign. And down in the center of there is the trapezium. And let's see if we could try to zoom in a little bit here. Or just doing digital zoom. Whoop, other way. There we go. So if we dim it down, you can see the 4 stars right here in the center. That's the trapezium. There's actually like 8 or 10 stars inside the trapezium itself. But as you can see right near here, we have A, B, C, and D. And then the stars E and F can also be visible in smaller telescopes. Those are relatively easy to see in like a 4-inch telescope and decent seeing. So that's the trapezium, and that's, as this nebula condenses down, the gases that are in the gas and dust inside of there are condensing down, making baby stars, and that's called This is just what an emission nebula actually does, but this is a stellar nursery. So this is where little baby stars are actually being created, and that's the Orion Nebula. So this is where it all starts for the solar systems and stuff like that. So that is the trapezium. Now we can pull this up again. Pull this out. Now what the software is actually doing is what we would generally do in astrophotography anyway. And it's stacking live. It's actually stacking images on the fly. And that's what we would normally do with astrophotography, is take a bunch of pictures, stack them, and that helps reduce noise in your overall image by stacking them. And then there's other ways you can process out the noise. But rather than taking like an hour-long exposure, you can actually just take 6-10 minutes, or you can take 5-12-minute shots, or what have you. So it's something we can go check out. Request for Aries. Aries is actually right about where, not far from where the Pleiades is right now. Unfortunately, there's not a lot. Aries is basically 4 stars. And there's not a lot in there to actually show. So you'd actually have to be outside looking it up. The planet Uranus is actually in the constellation of Aries right now, it looks like. There's a couple little galaxies up in there too. Actually a bunch of little galaxies. So the constellation Aries, unfortunately, isn't something I can get in the scope. It'd be something you have to go out and actually check out and just see the collection of stars at this point. So I can't do the constellations, are just too big, unfortunately. So I'll point that out next time I see you guys. So this is the Orion Nebula in hydrogen alpha. Now, just for the sake of argument, and just so we can understand some more of the spectrum, this is hydrogen. So let's stop the camera and switch wavelengths. So hydrogen, particularly hydrogen alpha, sits way over in the red part of the spectrum. And there are different filters that we can use to study different phenomenon inside of different celestial objects. So let's stop this and switch it over to the oxygen filter. Now this is an oxygen 3 filter, which means it passes double ionized oxygen. And what you're going to notice is that the details that you see from hydrogen to oxygen are very, very different. And this is why we use different filters to study objects, because we're actually able to see different phenomenon come out in those nebulas. So we're going to switch this over, do some adjustments here real quick. Get some of the reflections out. There we go. And you'll see that there's different structures that come out when doing different wavelengths of light. And this is where you have the spectrum of visible light. You can actually see and make filters that show different phenomenon in those objects by isolating those wavelengths of light. So right now we're running oxygen 3. This is a 3 nanometer oxygen 3 filter. Cuts a ton of light out of there, so the camera's got to be open for a long period of time. These are 15-second exposures at the moment, which is nothing. For live stacking like what we're doing here, the software is just going to continuously stack these 15-second images over and over and over, combining them. Normally what you would do is you take much longer exposures. If I'm running this for my own imaging purposes, generally those are 3-minute, 5-minute, 10-minute individual exposures, and all stacked together to bring out that detail. So this is a process that of course takes a long time. But going back to the Orion Nebula really quick, this is obviously in the constellation of Orion. It's in the Sword of Orion. It's a wintertime object, so we're at the end of the season for this. So we're just getting it before it sets and gets too low out there. And it's probably the most photographed deep sky object out there. And it sits about 1,600 light years away from the Earth. And it's an emission nebula, which means it's condensing down and making new stars that are emitting light. So this is the Orion Nebula. It's a great beginner target. Now, just to give you a sense of scale, the nebula is actually 34, 35 light years in diameter. So it's huge. And for those who don't know what a light year is roughly 6 trillion miles. So it's big. That's about all that's about all you can get out of it. So it's big. Now I know there's another favorite not far from Orion, and that's the Horsehead Nebula. And the Horsehead is really, really popular. So before it sets, we're gonna swing over there, and to make sure we can get it, it's also another emission nebula. But we need to highlight the filter once again. So we want to go over there and check that out before it sets. So just a little jog right next door. We're going to switch over once again, go back, and we're going to kick this up a bit. It's still relatively faint, but the Horsehead does require a little bit more dig into the night sky with longer exposures. So we've switched it up. We put the hydrogen alpha back in the system. So the filter that highlights that red wavelength of light, we've chucked that back into the light path. And the filter wheels are kind of neat. A filter wheel is basically a disc that sits on the back of the telescope right in front of the camera. So we can actually hold all the filters that we want in there. Kind of think of it kind of like a painter's palette. And without having to get fingers and dust and stuff in there, we'll just simply have this wheel of these filters, and you can put a bunch of them in there. This one holds 7, and we can rotate them into position anytime that we want. And that's how the filter wheel works. So there's 7 filters in this wheel at the moment. We can rotate that into the position and switch things on the fly without having to be out there with the telescope. So now we're on the Horsehead Nebula. This is just off the bright star Alnitak, which is the lower star in the belt of Orion. And it's getting rather low. So I wanted to get on this before we flipped over to some of the other objects that are up in the nighttime sky, because this is a favorite, and it's one that we need to check out before we lose it. And so this is the Horsehead. This is a fan favorite. A lot of people really like to shoot this object because it's so dynamic, but it's incredibly difficult to see naked eye. Being that it's relatively easy to find. Now, photographically, it's relatively easy. Obviously, we're doing this in, 30-second exposures. We're looking about 820 light years away from the Earth, just off of the bright star Alnitak in the belt of Orion. And this sits in the constellation of Orion, and you need about a 10-inch telescope to see this, and it needs to be in dark skies, and preferably with an H-beta filter. You could do it with a UHC, but the Horsehead is very, very difficult to do. The bigger the telescope, the easier it is to do it. I've seen it in a 16-inch. It's still a bit of a challenge. It's trying to find like a black thumbprint against black tablecloth. G-Man, the Orion Nebula is about 14 to 1600 light years away. That's just for that. Obviously, the constellation of Orion itself it varies because all the stars are at different positions. So But yeah, the Orion Nebula itself is 14 to 1600 light years from Earth. Let me get a drink here, excuse me. Lots of talking. Now, the Horsehead, which actually is not that far from the Orion Nebula, is basically two different types of nebula. So the gray area that we see up here, that is an emission nebula. It actually is red. If you take a picture of it in color, it's red. And that's known as IC 434. Now, there's a variety of different catalogs out there in the nighttime sky. The most popular one and most well known, of course, is the Messier catalog, or the M catalog, as you see in your hand controllers and your books and stuff like that. And that's generally the catalog that we all start with, is the Messier catalog. From there, you go to NGC, or New General Catalog. And then from there, you have a lot of various catalogs that break into very specific types of objects. NGC and IC catalogs kind of are big catalogs that collect all kinds of stuff. And but after you get to that, you kind of get more specific. And if you're wondering, the IC catalog stands for Index Catalog, and it's a very wide variety of objects. Most NGC objects and most Messier objects have an NGC number and an IC number. After that, you start to get into kind of the exotic stuff. And to segue into that, you see the Horsehead right here in the middle. That is called a Barnard object. It's a dark nebula. And the Barnard catalog, and E.E. Barnard, the astronomer that labeled all these, my favorite astronomer, did this with a 10-inch telescope and a couple others and glass plates. And he made a book of all this called the Photographic Atlas of Selected Regions of the Milky Way. And the original book is really hard to find and expensive because he handpicked all the pictures that went into those books. If you find one, it's a 2-part book, but they're very, very cool. And for the most part, they are actually probably held up somewhere in a vault, is that where they're at. So that is the Photographic Atlas of Selected Regions of the Milky Way, is what that book is called. There is a new version out now that is up to date, but I don't think it's as cool as the original, but it's something you can go check out and definitely take a look at it. So bear with me, kind of getting a little glitch on the internet speed here. We'll try to get out of that. But the Barnard catalog, or the B catalog, is all dark nebulas. And the Horsehead that you see here in the middle there, that is number 33, B33. And there's a variety of other ones, but they're all dark nebulas, where they're basically dense clouds of dust that are actually obstructing background stars. Very, very cool. A lot of them sit along the arms of the Milky Way in the winter and mostly the summer, but there's something cool that you can go check out. So this is the Horsehead Nebula in hydrogen alpha. Total exposure time right now is 6 minutes in hydrogen alpha, and one of my favorite objects, but unfortunately we are at the end of the season for it. So we did Orion, we did the Horsehead. Now we're going to switch over to Comet Atlas. This is kind of one of our requested targets for the night. So I'm going to go ahead and stop this, and we're going to go find the comet. Now this software, which is SkyX from Software Bisque, this is controlling everything. This has the camera, the filter wheel, the focuser, the mount. Everything here is controlled through this system, and we can download pretty much anything you want. We can track satellites with the appropriate mounts. We're running a Paramount tonight from Software Bisque, so you can do satellite tracking with that, but other mounts would have difficulty. But we can also download all kinds of stuff like Comet's database. So did that ahead of time. So let's check that in here. We're going to go find C 2019 Y4 Atlas. This was the last comet found in 2019. So we're going to go find that right now. We've got it inputted, and now we're going to go slew off and find it. It is growing a little bit of a tail, from what I understand. So we'll see what we can do with it. We also have to switch the filters. We're now looking at a object that requires visible light, not narrowband light, like our hydrogen alpha filter. So what we're going to do is flip this over to the green filter. We don't need to expose as long because it's relatively bright, so let's drop it to 15 seconds and hit start. And this is going to be Comet Atlas. And again, this is the last object, or last comet discovered in 2019. C 2019 Y4 Atlas. And supposedly this is possibly supposed to get to almost naked eye by May. So we'll see about that. So you can see it right there, right in the middle there. That is Comet Atlas in its star field right now. And it's moving. If we were to stay here for a couple hours on the target and just continue to take pictures, you could do a time lapse and watch the comet actually move through the star field there. So, but that is Comet Y4 Atlas in the constellation. What constellation are we in on this one, actually? Let's double check here real quick. And I'm not ignoring anybody. I'm actually just looking it up on Sky Safari. So let's just double check real quick. Let's see, 2019 Y4. Got a satellite going through the frame on the top left. I'm going to butcher this constellation. Camel Opardalius. Yeah, I butchered that. So it is actually it's not particularly, it's getting lower. It's up in the northern part of the sky. It's not far from the Big Dipper, the upper portion of the Big Dipper. And I believe it's just roughly over 1 astronomical, 1.03 AU from us right now. So just a little bit over 93 million miles away from the Earth at this point. So it's out there, but this is supposedly going to get almost naked eye visible moving forward. So, but that is Comet C 2019 Y4. It does have a faint tail coming off of it where you'd need a lot longer exposures. But yeah, as it kind of coming off this way, apparently. So, but yes, this is visible. It's saying we're at about 7.6 magnitude, so it's just outside the visible limit of the human eye from a dark sky, unless you've got really good eyes and you're really well dark adapted. Usually the limiting magnitude for naked eye is 7th magnitude, so it's at 7.6 just outside of there. So we can brighten this up a little bit. But yeah, that is Comet Atlas right there. Looks pretty good. Zoom in just a little bit. And that star, the bright star over here, may look bright, but that's actually HR 2830. There's not actually a name for it. It's just a bright star in the field, in case you're wondering. There are some galaxies in there somewhere. I don't think we're digging that faint at the moment. But this just goes to show there's a lot that you can actually do from your backyard. I know some of the equipment we're using tonight is kind of on the upper tier, but you can do a lot of really nice stuff, which is basic stuff. You don't need anything like this. to enjoy the night sky. Just going out and viewing with your naked eye is something that you could do with you or your family or whatever it is whatever you would like to do. There's always something to go out and explore. And this time where things are kind of weird and we're kind of stuck at home and looking for something to do, there's 100 billion stars in our galaxy, so there's 100 billion reasons for you not to be bored. There's always something for you to go out and explore, and whether it's astronomy or music or art or whatever it may be, you can always find something to dabble in or explore. So take this time and maybe find something new for you. And whether that's astronomy, and we're glad to have you here, or maybe that's something new and different that you've always wanted to try, check it out. So, but if you're just tuning into that, or us here, we are on C2019 Y4 Atlas, and this is one of the brighter comets in the nighttime sky right now. Basically a dirty snowball, just over 93 million miles away from us right now. It's not far from the Big Dipper, the outer part, a proportion of the Big Dipper right now. Jerry, I've never measured it, so that's something I should probably check. And see how dark our skies are here. Probably have to wait till the moon goes away. For those of you who aren't aware, a Bortle measurement is the darkness reading of the sky. The closer you are to zero, the better. A Bortle 0 sight is perfect, and the further you get from 0 or 1, the worse it is. So if you're like in downtown LA, I think it's like a 7, which is awful. But you know, that's how most of us are. So, but one of these days I'm going to have to actually measure what the Bortle location is here. But I've been able to do some pretty good stuff here. You know, we're looking at a comet 93 million miles away with a 6-inch telescope. So, not too bad. All right. So that's pretty much it for Comet Atlas. And we can come back if anybody wants to see it, or if anybody misses it, we can always come back. So, but we are not far from M81 and M82. We're going to go extragalactic now. Let's see if we can get both of them together. I think they're pretty close. We're going to slew over to the next target. Now the next target is M81, and M81 is a spiral galaxy in Ursa Major. Now it also has a companion, M82. They're not actual physical companions, but they are close enough to where you can normally get them in the same field of view. So we're going to give that a shot. We're going to stick with 15 seconds. That's been working pretty good. Still 2x2 bin. This is the green filter, by the way. I like to use green because that's where the human eye peaks, and sensitivity is in the green. So it gives you something that's close to what you could expect to see in a telescope. Now the camera doesn't make that fair because it's way more sensitive, but so there we go. We actually got both in the field of view. Let's see. So this is M81 and this is M82. These are both 12 million light years away from the Earth. This is in the constellation Ursa Major, or the Big Dipper. So the Ursa Major is the large bear. That's the that is the constellation. Now, we like to make pictures out of constellations as well, and the Big Dipper is one of those. And the official name for something like that is a asterism, is the name of that. So Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Those are the name of the constellations. Or you have the Little Dipper and the Big Dipper, and those are asterisms or pictures that we've actually made out of a constellation. So we're up in Ursa Major right now. This is almost overhead at the moment. But this is M81 on the left, which is a spiral galaxy, and M82 on the right, which is actually, I believe, an irregular galaxy. There's not really any shape to it. It is known as the Cigar Galaxy, for obvious reasons. It's like a cigar. So these two are relatively easy to see. You'd actually be surprised. I can see them in a 50 millimeter finder scope in a dark sky. Now, at home, you're probably going to need a little bit more aperture. But these are some fun galaxies that you can actually pick out from home. It helps if the moon is down. But something like a 4-inch telescope will do it. But if you can get yourself like a 6, 8, or 10, or even a 10-inch, now it'll become a lot easier to actually see it. And as you get bigger, it becomes easier. And it's definitely a fun pair of galaxies that you can go out and check out. And these are both 12 million light years away. Now, in darker skies, you can start to see more detail. You can start to see the spiral arms, which are just starting to come out here. I've seen these spiral arms in my 16-inch job in a dark sky. So you can see some really awesome structure if you get away from city lights. So when we can all return back to reality and go to a dark sky, take your telescope, go camping with the family and friends, and do it on a night where there's no moon and it's nice and dark. And pick these when they're up, and you'd be impressed with what you can actually see there. There's a fair amount of detail there. Now, 82 over here is always going to kind of look like that cigar look to it. But if you have a camera there, it actually has this extension of hydrogen, almost like a bow tie of hydrogen that sticks out over this way. And that requires a camera with a hydrogen alpha filter to take a look at that. But these are two very, very cool galaxies that you can see mostly from your backyard in a light polluted location. Maybe not in the worst light pollution, but decent. An average backyard, you should be able to see these relatively easily. And this is M81, which is on the left. That's a spiral galaxy. And M82 on the right, which is the Cigar Galaxy, and a regular galaxy. And these are just off of the Big Dipper, or Ursa Major is the name of that. And they're about 12 million light years away from the Earth. So the light you're seeing, this is always fun to do. The light you're seeing, or the light that's hitting the sensor of the camera at the moment, left there 12 million years ago. And it's been traveling all that time to get here. So quite a drive. A long, long way there. But there's a ton of other stuff, though, that we can see tonight. So we're going to continue on with our star party. Again, I can see all your chats there. If you have any questions, or if there's a target you want to see, just chime right in. I will be happy to throw the telescope over there if it's visible and see what's going on there. On top of that, just to double check what's going on out there, bear with me just a second. Hit the wrong X. Let's fix that real quick. Happens when you got too many windows running at once. There we go. Fixed it. And let's make this look better. That's better. Okay. Now, where were we? Close out of this. There we go. Okay. Life is better. Now, let's see. Let's pick a new target. Ah, I know where we should go. A personal favorite of mine, and I know everybody enjoys this, and you probably have one of these products in your house anyway. Get the camera rolling here. If you guys wanted to actually check this out real quick, I'm going to disconnect our secondary camera. We're going to switch cameras outside just to see what's going on outside. Connect this. And let's just take a look at what's going outside right now. So, seconds. So, outside at the moment, there's a couple different cameras out there. But we also have our all sky camera out there, and not having it right now. Let's switch this up real quick. There we go. So you may have seen some of these before. This is an all sky camera. This allows us to kind of see, let's get a better layout of what's going on. This gets used at observatories quite a bit, so we can actually see what's going on. And the moon's pretty bright out there, so we could actually tone this down a bit. But this allows us to see what's up. Obviously, it's a lot more interesting when the Milky Way is visible across it. But this is our all-sky camera. We actually use this primarily for meteor showers and catching different stuff there, but we got our 2 telescopes out there, so that's just another little doodad that we've got hanging outside right now. A little bit better, but moon's nice and bright up there. Got Orion setting off over here, north. It's right over here. Big Dipper way over here. So let's switch that up. So we'll disconnect from this real quick and get back to what we're looking. Hey, John. M13's probably up, but it's... Actually, I don't think it's up here yet. So you've got about a 3-hour jump on us over there on the East Coast from us over here in the West. So we're on our next target right now. We're going to switch over here. We're going to go back to 15 seconds and get started on here as well. So we're on another galaxy. This is one of my favorites, just because it's easy to see and it's got some cool structure in it. I'm pretty sure we all have one of these products, of course, in our house somewhere, but this is the Whirlpool Galaxy. It's going to take a couple shots here to bring out the details there as the camera stacks them. But we'll be able to pull out some cool stuff here in a second. Now, the Whirlpool Galaxy, a lot of people think it's in Ursa Major. It's actually not. It's not far from it. But it's technically in Canis Venactices, and this is about 28 million light years away from the Earth. It's actually 2 galaxies together that have the one over here, which is part of what we would call the Whirlpool, but it's actually, it has its own NGC designation, which would be NGC 5195 is this section over here. That, from my understanding, has already passed through the main spiral galaxy and disturbed it, or the main galaxy has already disturbed that one, and they're now separating apart. So this is a good example of 2 galaxies interacting with each other, and our Milky Way will eventually do this with the Andromeda Galaxy in the very, very far distant future. We have enough on our plate to worry about at the moment. We don't need to worry about galaxies running into each other. But this is the Whirlpool Galaxy in Canis Venactices, about 28 million light years away from the Earth. It's a beautiful face-on spiral galaxy. Um, when you study galaxies, you'll find that can be in different positions. There's edge-on galaxies, which look like you're looking down the edge of a frisbee, and face-on galaxies like we have here. And then there's several others out there as well. So that's something that you'll see as we start observing different targets. Hey Brad, Sirius is too low from my position now. It's almost in a tree. So we kind of lost it for the season at this point. So I'm not able to get Sirius at the moment because of its position. So this is M51, also known as the Whirlpool Galaxy. It's a face-on spiral in Canis Venactices. It's a great springtime object. It's a great challenge target if you're just getting into astronomy and you want to catch a cool galaxy from a dark sky. This is really nice in like an 8-inch telescope. If you've got a 12-inch telescope, it gets really interesting, and the bigger you go, the cooler it gets. But it's a fun one for pretty much anybody to see. So if next time you're out, if you're looking for a challenge, if you're new and you're looking for a challenge, this is a fun one to check out. And for me, it never gets old. So it's a fun one to always explore. And if you've got some aperture, if you got a buddy who's got like a 20-something inch scope, have them throw it on this. It gets pretty awesome to see it. Now there's a whole bunch of stuff up in the nighttime sky, so if there's something you guys want to see, just let me know. If I can get it, I'll try to get it. Obviously, we're losing a lot of the winter stuff at the moment. A lot of it has already set. We could try to give, let's actually try to give Sirius a try. It's gonna look real bright, obviously, because it's the brightest star in the night sky, but we'll try to see if we can get it and see if it'll probably blow out the screen, but we'll spend a little bit of time on Sirius. So if I can get it. If we can't, then we'll try another target real quick. But it's something to give a go. Worst case scenario is you can't get it. So Saturn is up in the early morning at the moment, so not visible at the moment. Actually, there's not a lot of planets up at the moment, so that's just how that works. So we're just going to do one shot on Sirius just to see if it's up, because it's going to be, actually, this is way too much time. Let's do 1 second. Actually, put this up. Do 5 seconds. Sirius is majorly bright, so we'll see if we can get Sirius real quick. Sirius is about 8.5 light years away. Brightest star in the nighttime sky. There it is. There's Sirius. Sirius is actually a binary star. It has a companion, Sirius B. The bright one you always see is Sirius A. But Sirius B is right next to it. It's relatively hard to see because it gets outshone by its brighter counterpart. The best time to actually look for Sirius B is in dusk, so you can split them, and or if there's a way for you to kind of block all that in there. So there is Sirius and its star field there. Brightest star in the nighttime sky. And currently saying goodbye for its season. We'll catch it when it comes back around. So there is Sirius, 8.5 light years away from the Earth in the constellation Canis Major, the large dog. And there is Sirius. Let's see. Bill's got a good one. NGC 3628. I haven't done that one. Go check that out. So, NGC 3628. Find it. Go find it. Hi. I've never done this one. 36, 8. Oh, okay. NGC 3628, the Hamburger Galaxy, or Sarah's Galaxy, 35 million light years away, about 300,000 light years long. Oh, this is the Leo triplet. I'm sorry. Not used to seeing it by itself. So NGC 3628 is part of the Leo triplet of galaxies, with its two others, M65 and M66. So let's center the crosshairs here. There we go. We're going to center this up real quick because I know all of them will actually fit. We're going to center this real quick. Switch over the camera. Go to live stack. Kick this up a bit. Start. So now we're on the Leo triplet, which includes NGC 3628, M65, and M66. This is a really cool set of galaxies. The NGC one is actually harder of the three to see. M65 is the easier. M65 and 66 are the easier ones to see of these at the moment. But this is a set of galaxies in the constellation Leo the Lion. There's 3 of them in here. They kind of form a triangle. Stretch this a little bit and wait for some of the images to download and make this a little brighter. But this is a good one if you're in dark skies and you're looking for another kind of a challenge set of targets. This is a fun one. So M65 is down here, M66 is right here, and NGC 3628 is over here. This will take a little bit of time to compile because we're talking faint galaxies at this point. M65, actually this one right here, NGC 3628, that is 35 million light years away. And the other companions there should be relatively close with that as well. They're all roughly, it seems like about 35 million light years away in the constellation of Leo. And actually, M66 is about 31 million light years, give or take. So it's a little bit closer. So again, if you're just checking this out, this is the Leo triplet. 1, 2, 3. These are 3 galaxies in the constellation of Leo the Lion. Actually, this is why we're not getting it. There we go. Pick it up a little bit. 3 galaxies in the constellation of Leo the Lion. These are a fun one to do this time of year. It's kind of a staple for the springtime skies because it's a cool little collection of galaxies. But we're going to push the sensitivity up here a little bit and start to bring out some more details here and let it kind of compile a bit. Alex, yeah, we can do M100. I always forget about M100. It's a cool galaxy, but it always gets overshadowed by so many of the popular ones as well. And that's kind of the problem with the springtime, is there's so many galaxies to take a look at. Let me get a drink here, guys. Talk. Yeah, so we're on the Leo triplet right now. And we're looking at M65, 66, and NGC 3628 right over here. And this is kind of a cool set of galaxies. And they actually look really good if you actually ever feel the need to image these. They actually look pretty cool whenever you have the chance to actually get out there and really dig in and take some pictures of it. It's actually a really nice set of galaxies. There's a lot of nice detail in there to see, and actually shot this last week, I believe. See if I can find that, but it's a real fun set of targets to check out. Now this is a live stack of what we're looking at right now, just to give you an example of if you were to sit on this for a while. This is what a stack image looks like from these. Give you an idea of what the Leo triplet looks like. Obviously this is flipped from what we're looking at right now, but that is the Leo triplet right there, where you have M65, 66, and 3628 right over there. So that is the Leo triplet and what we're looking at the moment. So there we go. All right. Let's see. Richard wants to get the core of the Rosette Nebula. We can actually get that, and let's try to get it while we have a chance at the moment, just before we lose it. And then we've got plenty of time to do galaxies. We have no time to do the winter stuff. So let's try to get the Rosette Nebula real quick. I'm gonna fling the telescope to the opposite part of the sky. We're going to flip our filter wheel back over to hydrogen because we want to be able to get that hydrogen gas in there. So, excuse me. We've got that going there. So, fling this over here. Scope still slewing. Get all this ready to go. And we're going to kick the exposures up a bit. So right now we're sitting on the core of the Rosette Nebula. The Rosette Nebula is huge nebula structure with a star cluster in the center of it, and it's a fun one to check out if you ever have a chance. It's actually a bit of a challenge to see visually, and even photographically it takes a little bit of time to pull it out. It's got a lot of real faint tendrils and stuff, but a hydrogen alpha filter will take care of it pretty quick. So we'll see what we can pull out here pretty quick. It's pretty big, so we're actually not able to get the whole nebula. It actually extends past the nebula, but it looks pretty darn good. We are using a 3 nanometer hydrogen alpha filter from Chroma, and the narrower that bandpass is, the more structure and detail contrast you get out of it. So that 3 nanometer really brings a lot of that home. And right now we're doing 30-second exposures. We're in a weird part of the sky, so it's streaking a little bit, but we won't be here very long. We're going to flip back over to galaxies because we're losing it. But at the moment, this is the Rosette Nebula. Just before we start to lose it for the season, this is a cool one. In the winter time, you need a really big field of view to catch the Rosette. So it's a fun target, but you need a big telescope, or not a big telescope, a wide field telescope to collect all that field. It's just so big. We shot it about a week ago with our 4-inch refractor and the full frame camera, which has the field of view to do it. But this is our larger 150 with the smaller chip on it, so it just can't cover. Even with the reducer installed, we can't get all of that. So, but that's the Rosette Nebula in hydrogen alpha. Doesn't look too bad. So that was a good call. So we'll stop that one there. I'm going to close this up, and we're going to pick M100, which is another galaxy. I'm going to slew back over to the opposite side of the sky. Now, M100 is actually a pretty neat galaxy. It's another face-on spiral. But it gets overshadowed a lot. And I'm not sure why, because it's actually got some really cool structures to it. But it's one that we're going to try to get it. Let's see. Not sure where we're sitting with this. So let's flip this over. That's fine. And now we're on M100. So let's start the exposure. So M100 is, like I said, a face-on spiral. It's in Comet Berenices, about 52 million light years away. So it's a little bit of a trek out there. So we're going to let the camera dig into it. We're back on the green, visible green filter. This one's probably going to take a little bit of time to stack, just because it's got some real faint details. You can see it right there in the middle. Now, we are in Comet Berenices. There's galaxies galore in this part of the sky, so you'll start to see a lot of little fuzzy stuff start to show up there. There's another galaxy right there. That's known as NGC 4312. It's a little bit more of an edge on. And then there's a variety of different galaxies around here as well. I believe this guy, there's a little faint thing right here that is NGC 4322. And then there should be a brighter, I'm sorry, this is NGC, probably NGC 4328. And then the dimmer one over here is 4322. And then, of course, we have the edge-on spiral over here, which is 4312. Excuse me. And, of course, we have M100 right in the center there, looking at us face on. So pretty good. So that was a good call, Alex. Thanks for picking that one. Allergies. So this is in Comet Berenices. Let's pull some stuff out here. Get a drink here. $52 million light years away, and that is M100. This one would actually take some exposure time, but you can start to see some of the spiral arms that sit out here. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. As you expose further, it becomes more and more detailed on how much stuff sits in this star field, and there's a ton of galaxies up here, and it gets pretty crazy. So we're gonna switch it up real quick, and we're going to go to a globular cluster next. And if you're not aware of what a globular cluster is, globular clusters, there are two types of star clusters in space. There's an open cluster, like the Pleiades that we saw earlier, and there's a globular cluster, which is a dense ball of stars. And normally these are visible in the summer months because they make a halo around the core of the galaxy. But this particular one kind of marks the coming of the globular season, and this is known as M3. We're going to see if we can get it. It might be a little low for us at the moment, but we're going to give that a go. But M3 is one of the initial globulars that starts the season. Now, most globular clusters have somewhere between 500,000 or 750,000 stars, except for the larger. No, we got it. So, looks pretty good, actually. This is M3. And M3, like I said, is one of the early risers for the globulars. This is in Canis Venactices. And probably has about 500,000 so stars. The biggest globular cluster visible for the most part in the northern hemisphere is M13, which is up in the constellation Hercules, which will be visible later in the evening. We won't be running that late, but for the most part, it works pretty well there. So, but right now we are on M3, constellation Canis Venactices. You can see this in about a 4-inch telescope. A larger telescope would do resolve more down to the core. But we're about 34,000 light years away from the Earth, and we're right about 174 light years edge to edge on the cluster. So it's big. It's a lot of stars. It kind of looks like a big pile of sugar is normally how I like to explain it when I'm out doing outreach events. But yeah, so this is actually a good pick. The Cat's Eye Nebula. Let's see if we can hit the Cat's Eye. So Cat's Eye is a fun one. It's gonna be small, but it's something we can definitely see if we can get that for you. NGC 6960, that's actually the Western Veil. I love the Veil Nebula, but it is not visible this time of year. That's a summertime object. So hopefully in the summer, late May, June, moving almost into October is actually in October, late October, you can get NGC 6960 and the rest of the Veil Nebula. The Cat's Eye Nebula is one. I'll have to check that out. Just double check. I don't observe that one too often. That's in Draco. So let's see. See if we can do the Cat's Eye for you real quick. NGC 6543 is the Cat's Eye. So the Cat's Eye is not going to be one we can get tonight. It is rising, but it's low in its position. So probably have to wait a couple weeks before I can get the Cat's Eye for you, just from where it's sitting in its position right now. But that was a good call out. Let's try. So there's another set of globular clusters that I like to do, and they're generally off the beaten path while we're on globulars. And a lot of people don't know too much about these. It's a pretty small catalog, but they are globulars, and these are known as the Palomar globulars. And these are quite challenging to find visually. There's only 15 of these, and they're fairly faint. So, Roy, I don't have a frequency yet on how often we're going to do this. I want to see how popular it is. Obviously, a lot of people have been hanging out. I personally like to do at least once a month, maybe twice a month, preferably. But yeah, we'll mess around with it as they get more popular. But I'll say right now, twice a month at the moment, just so we have enough room to stretch out some of the targets that are up in the nighttime sky. That way we're not overlapping too much. So we're on another globular cluster at this point. This is Palomar 3. Palomars are very, very diffuse globulars, and they're really quite challenging visually. You practically need almost a 20-inch telescope to find all of them. And it's definitely something that is not for the faint of heart. And they're relatively difficult to resolve. I actually think the one that we picked at the moment, M3, is one of the hardest of all, because this is the star field, and right in the middle is M3, and you can almost start to see it as just a faint little haze there. But these are super challenging globular clusters that require a lot of patience to see. I mean, just to give you an example, at the moment, M3, or I'm sorry, Palomar 3 is a 14.26 magnitude globular. For those who don't know about magnitudes, 7 is the limiting magnitude of the human eye. The limiting magnitude of a 16-inch telescope is about 15 or 15.5. This guy is right at the limit of about a 15 or 16-inch telescope at the moment. I love things like this. They're really quite challenging, but they're not the most exciting things in the world. But there's just it's basically you're looking for a small haze. But this is the Palomar 3 globular cluster shining at a dim 14, just over 14th magnitude. And there are 15 Palomar globular clusters to see. Let's see if we can pick out a faint. There's actually another one that's actually more visible at the moment. Let me double check this note real quick. Let's switch real quick. We're going to switch from Palomar 3 to Palomar 4 and see if we can pull that out a little bit more. So this is actually the reason, personally, why I got into imaging. I'm not really too much about the pretty pictures. I like finding really weird, obscure things, and unfortunately, just with life, I'm not able to get out to nice dark skies that often. So imaging, I kind of use an extension of visual astronomy to allow us to see just stupid, faint things. Weirder the better, harder the better. So rather than bringing out the 16-inch or the 28-inch scopes, try to, when I can, cameras, a telescope in the backyard allows me to basically do deep sky observing without having to really leave home. And the new addition of live stack, like we're seeing here, has really allowed that to extend. So while I like taking pictures and sharing them with people like everybody else, this is kind of the fun stuff for me, as basically using it as an extension of deep sky observing that we can all do from home. Now it's really kind of hard to see. There's a little chain of stars in here, and that would be Palomar 4. I know these aren't super exciting. That's why they're hard to see. But those are the Palomar globular clusters. If you're looking for a super difficult challenge, and there's only 15 of them, try the Palomar cluster. Also doesn't help that we have a bright moon up at the moment. But if you've got a 15-inch telescope, or all of that. So, all right. We're going to do a couple more targets. We're going to get reconnected here. Kind of lost connection for a second. Give me just a second, get some of this stuff up and running here. Okay. All right, I think we're back finally. Um, like I said earlier, have a little bit of internet issues today. I think because everyone's at home, everybody's streaming stuff. It gets a little laggy, so try to let that clear up here in a little bit. We'll pick a couple more targets, and then probably wrap up this evening. Um, Thanks for all of you guys hanging in there. It's been kind of fun to do it. We're going to try to do this more often, and just keep an eye on our web, and um, we'll be doing more of this in the future. Just keep an eye on it. If you like what you see, you can always hit our subscribe button, and that'll just let you know when we're doing more videos in the future. So, basically, due to some technical stuff, we're going to wrap this one up. We've already gone for an hour and a half. Thank you all for tuning into all of this. I hope you enjoyed it. And we will catch you all on the next one. If you want to know more about it, we'll just check out our website, www.focusastro.org, and hit subscribe if you want to see more videos, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks where we do another one. Thanks for joining Starstream by Focus Astronomy. Big thanks to Skywatcher for supporting this, and we will see you guys on another time. Thanks a lot, and have a great evening.